Okay, this is Credo, a Chaosium game. I've played this once in my life, and I really was kind of taken by it because it's very cute. You can tell by the picture, right? It's a game that I'm not quite sure what it's about. It tries to claim that it's about the entire era running through the different councils of early Christianity, starting with the Nicene Council. But it's about the formation of the Nicene Creed, so it's kind of tough to understand how it can be both. Something that a game that starts with the Nicene Council and runs a couple hundred years of heresies, etc., as well as something that ends when you come up with the Nicene Creed. But we'll ignore that for a little bit because there's something so cute about it, and the fact that it really explores some of the politics and in terms of how the articles of faith were kind of decided upon. And the same sort of mechanisms went into how the New Testament, what elements would go in the New Testament, etc. Very much interplay of secular political figures and the church figures, and what they could kind of get out of each other, and you could almost picture it as a constitutional convention type of situation. Now, something like this, historical though aspects of it are, could be somewhat disturbing to some people's faith. Well, don't watch if you're afraid that it is, because there is a little bit of a lighthearted take on it. This is not a game which simply what it is examining, in a sense, as a game, might feel like blasphemy to some, I would guess. But personally, I'm not a faithful person, therefore to me it's an amusing and interesting aspect of history to look at. The game does not go about saying, things, it doesn't make any kind of lightness about Christianity itself, nor the articles of faith, but it does explore the known techniques by which they were arrived at, and the political machinations there, to some extent. Okay, so what do you have for the game? Well, interestingly enough, it's supposed to handle 2 to 5 players. I can't imagine playing this in 2. I played it in 3, and it felt a little weak there. It really kind of needs 4 at least. But the components come with unseparated 4 of these church displays instead of 5. And I'm not quite sure that the game's components, other than these displays, and you could obviously make another one for the 5th player, could probably handle more players. I'm not sure how many more, but I would feel perfectly comfortable in 6. I'm not sure if it could handle, say, 8. That's probably close to the limit if it can. And these are going to be divided up into your articles of faith, which are going to be your most important elements of the creed to you, your firm beliefs, slightly in between, and then customary practices. And you've got 9 slots. Now, at the beginning of the game, you're going to be dealt 9 of these articles. And you have to choose where to place them in your church display. And the rules aren't very good at nailing everything down, so we may screw some things up. If you're familiar with the game and have other interpretations of them or knowledge, please feel free to share, because they are a little loose here. So at the beginning of the game, each player gets 9 of these articles, and they're going to be divided into 10 different slots, basically, which will be occur here. once they're actually passed by councils. And you start with the first one, and the orthodox there is, I believe in one God, of course. But, well, maybe not, of course. But there are other options. For example, a more pagan, I believe in many gods, including, I believe in 3 gods, which are, and then these will all be shuffled together. You might have duplicates of the same one, or duplicates, or 2 elements that, 2 articles that would go in the same slot. So each article is labeled by a slot. And then you have to choose one. Now, you have to discard any contradictory articles. So if you choose, say you have, I believe in 3 gods, which are, and I believe in one God, you would have to discard one of these 2, and the other one would have to go onto your display. The first article of faith is considered so important that if you're holding a copy of a card of that type, you must play it as an article of faith, as opposed to one of these lesser versions. You must also fill up your articles of faith before you start putting any firm beliefs and before you put any customary practices. And those are going to be the things that are your, you know, the more important they are, the more kind of power that you're going to have within the church if you get them passed, and the less you have if you fail. Okay. Then you deal out the church deck. And what this is this whole pile here, which is a combination of some bishops who come with an alignment as to which part of the empire they're in, the east or west, a number of votes that they have in any councils, and a name. Flock, who are going to be the population that you have under your control. And then there are also going to be some secular leaders in here, and I got to dig one out. One of the emperors, I think the Western Emperor isn't on the board at the beginning. He has to come in through an event card. But for example, here's the Patriarch of Rome. Now, because he's so important, he comes not only with a pile of votes, but with 1,000,000 flock on his side. And that comes kind of with the office automatically. And these are going to be dealt out evenly to all the players, with one additional block allocated to the non-player faction. And that'll be available for draws, basically, as you get control of them. And then finally there's an event deck, and I think you get handed some of these as well. Yeah, each player gets 3 of these event deck cards, which they can play immediately, and they must if they have play immediately cards. Actually, I don't think they can play any others. And then we're going to shuffle the remainder of the articles with the play immediately cards to provide a draw pile of events and articles. Okay. Each player's, and if there's a council in the play immediately cards, that gets resolved before the regular play starts. Then play will proceed by turns. In each turn you draw a card from the event deck. If it's play immediately, you have to play it. If it's other, you can keep it in your hand and play it whenever you like. If it's a doctrine card for an article you've already that's already been determined by council, you must discard it and you can get a replacement. If it's a doctrine card for an article which has not yet been determined, you can either play it on your display or discard it. If that doctrine is for an article which you don't already possess, you can display it immediately or discard it, your choice, whether or not you want to commit to that. If it duplicates a doctrine you already have, you're allowed to keep it in your hand. And at the beginning of the game, if you have duplicates, you're allowed to keep them. Those can be used, I'm not quite sure what the term is, but your church fathers can use it to, I'm not sure, it's not proselytizing. Is it? No. basically you can force another player into your beliefs. And I don't think that's the proselytizing table, because the proselytizing is it uses an event card and is going to give you people to your church. Each are these little sub-churches. And actually, some of the key elements of the Nicene Creed are not held by churches that are kind of acceptable now. These aren't all heresies that were completely stamped out. So, for example, there's elements that are held by the Coptics, by the Armenians, the Marians, that have been accepted into, the Marians, for example, have been accepted into Catholicism. I think the Coptics have too. I'm not positive about that. My knowledge of the church is much lower than it once was. As with most things in my life. Okay. If it's a different doctrine for the same article as one of your customs, only customs, the lowest level that you have, you can discard or repudiate, you can voluntarily repudiate your custom. You have to lose a church card for that. You discard one. And you discard the old article and put the new one on display. Basically, if you think you have a better chance of getting the new one passed. Now, these articles are available for examination. Everybody's got theirs shown. I'm not going to cut these sheets for play. Probably should. Why the hell not? I've cut the cards. Why not the sheets? So each player is going to have their own little tableau set up that shows what they believe in. Okay. If a card comes up that refers to the emperor, this means the Eastern Emperor, or the Western Emperor if the Eastern Emperor is not in play at that time. And the Emperor has the ability to call a general council to determine what the next article in the Creed at the end of his turn. Only the Emperor or an event card can cause this. The articles must be debated in order, and only one article can be debated and voted upon per general council. And that's where it gets kind of off the rails of history, right? The Nicene Creed was solidified one council, and instead here you're doing it over a course of 10 different councils, perhaps. Okay, so each church must announce whether they have an article appropriate to that layer. So if you're doing the first one, if anybody has an article 1, they have to declare that they have it and what it is. Now, I think these are face up anyway, as I've mentioned before, somewhat more definitively than that, I think. But if so, okay. So then, if you have an article, you must cast all your votes in favor of that article. People who don't have that article can be bribed or swayed otherwise to vote in a different direction. If there's only one article available among all the players, that one will automatically pass. And here's some tables that are used mainly due to the cards. Okay. And debate can be lively. The emperor basically has to preside over this, but he has to be fair by just trying to pay attention and give people the timing that they're allowed, because they're allowed to play event cards, etc., during the debate to affect the votes of other churches, and basically it's first come, first served in terms of announcement. Okay, so once all the debating and card playing is done, we calculate out the votes, and the winner is anyone who had the past article in their display anywhere. And the losers are anyone who had a different doctrine for that article in their display. And then there are players who might not have either, and they're not a winner or a loser. If there's a tie, there's no decision, and no article will be passed. The next church council has to be over the same article of faith. Okay, all the losers then lose a flock. If a player's article of faith is rejected, he loses 3 church cards. This is listed actually on here. And you're allowed to discard your weakest cards if you like. If he has no flock, then he loses bishops instead. So this is, I guess when they say church cards, they only mean the flock. They don't mean the bishops. Oh, and they certainly don't mean secular rulers. After those have been discarded, the winners get to collect a bonus based on this, and they draw off the church card out of the church cards, the shuffled deck. Once an article of faith has been voted on, it cannot be overturned. There may be events that change that, but we'll assume that's a general case. All the doctrine cards for that article are then discarded at that point. It no longer really matters that you hold that article anymore. It can't be changed in the church display. So yeah, they're not going to change. It can't be changed. You won't get a retallying of these values, but it's sometimes interesting to hold on to your failed articles of faith to see how well, both of them, to see how close the creed that you started with and tried to present is to the one that eventually gets passed by the players. Okay, and then the emperor has the right to enforce the council's decision against one player who voted for a doctrine which lost. It doesn't have to be somebody who held that doctrine. And that, I believe, is done on the enforce table. And you roll there, and the emperor is able, as the anointed secular ruler, is able to actually sway people over to his support, even if the church that controls the emperor had a different article of faith or voted in a different way. So that's kind of a random thing there. The game will end once all 10 articles have been selected and passed, or if a player gets 11 million total flock, or if a player gets 117 votes in the council. And then you count up your flock, and whoever has the most flock wins. And then everybody has to solemnly intone the entirety of the creed and probably giggle at some of the weird things that are going to come up out of this. You can't exchange flock, bishop, and secular cards. If your article is refuted, you cannot replace it with your own extra article. So when an article is refuted, that's another church father is going to, or a church father event card is going to be used to try to make somebody lose one of their firm beliefs or customs. I'm not sure what that means. I think it means... I don't think it means that you can't do it forever. But you shouldn't be able to do it very quickly. So I'm not sure about that. You can't refute your own articles. Players who lose all their flock, bishops, and seculars can continue to play. Yeah. The blue cards are church members. There are 3 types of cards. There's flock, which are just numbers of men. Bishops, who are specific historical bishops. And the patriarchs are considered bishops as well. They'll come with flock as well as votes. And then the secular cards are the emperor, empress, magister, militium, and 4 prefects. The Western Emperor, who's over here in the events cards, once he's played, will also act as a secular card from that point on. The bishops and seculars have the same format. They have a letter showing the half of the emperor. And the seculars will have this in parentheses. And there's one, the prefect of Gaul. He comes with a lot of flock and some votes, just like as if he's a bishop. Some cards will require a bishop to play, though. Some cards will require a secular, like Persecutions. Okay, the Patriarch of Constantinople and Jerusalem will be removed from the deck before play, so I got to pull them out. They only come in through event cards. The Bishop of Mursa is both west and east, which means he can be persecuted by either empire. The Bishop of Nisibis is marked with an X for location. He's outside of imperial control and can't be persecuted. Doctrine cards are gray. I guess they mean yellow. But they get mixed into the event deck. The event deck is also gray. Good. Okay. And there's a number of definitions of terms in the event cards, but pretty much you read them and try to interpret them. If we need to, we'll go here. Couple of interesting ones here. The church father, for example, he can do two things, refute or teach. To refute, he chooses a bishop to deliver his message, and then chooses a target church. He can try to refute a firm belief or custom, not an article of faith. He rolls 2 dice and consults the refute table. He can also teach if the player holds a duplicate of a doctrine displayed on the player's church card, and that'll allow him to give a church without that article of faith that article of faith. Proselytize card allows you to pick a bishop. He'll preach to another church and you get some of their people. Seculars can exile bishops. Those bishops can't vote on council. The flock can't fight in civil wars or usurpations, but they can be used in circumcellions, whatever those are. And they'll be counted towards the victory. Any secular from either side of the empire can remove any exile. Persecutions, this is a result that allows you to roll on the table, and you can cause certain problems. Some cards allow an immediate persecution. Sometimes a table, say seculars can persecute. The persecuting secular must be from the same half of the empire. I'm assuming if it's a refutation or proselytizing, it has to be from the person who's being picked on. Anyway, we'll deal this out for 4 players. Give it a shot. Obviously, I'm not sure how well it'll work solo, but because there is a decent amount of negotiation and silliness in it. I'm also not. Yeah, these have to be visible because otherwise you wouldn't know whether or not you can, whether or not you want to refute them, right? So yeah, and then over here, this is the card layout. This is just a place where we store the cards. So I'll cut this up and we'll get it started. I don't know. I hope it's as much fun solo and or on video as it was playing it in a group, because it was a humorous game to play in a group. All right, up it goes.